Coming up on Network Africa, the United Nations pushes for more COVID-19 vaccine supply in Africa. U.S. official warns of extreme hunger in Ethiopia's Tigray region. And Kenya appoints its first woman chief justice. Welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani. The UN Security Council is calling for more global assistance to expand COVID-19 vaccine access for African countries. A text that are unanimously adopted says that Africa has so far received only 2% of the vaccines administered worldwide. While addressing the Security Council, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the limited supply and insufficient support are undermining recovery on the continent. This is strongly supported by the chairperson of the Africa Union Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat.
Recovery from the pandemic offers an opportunity to address the root causes of conflict, put prevention at the forefront of our efforts, and implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the African Union's Agenda 2063. The entire United Nations system across the African continent is working to support these goals. African governments themselves have shown great commitment to fight the pandemic by establishing an African task force for a unified continent-wide approach. However, limited supply and access to vaccines and insufficient support for the pandemic response are now hampering and delaying the recovery. Out of 1.4 billion doses administered around the world today, only 24 million have reached Africa, less than 2%. It has shown that we are only as strong as our weakest link and will only achieve recovery in solidarity. A sense of shared vulnerability must translate into common purpose as we strive to overcome fragmentation and nationalism.
The biggest challenge Africa is facing is vaccine issue. It is a very big mistake to think that the world may be secure while the African continent is still lacking protection against the virus and its variants. Can we forget that the world is globalized and that the pandemic is profoundly too?
Two other issues on the continent. A record 55 million people around the world have fled their homes, but not their countries, and are living as internally displaced people. In its annual report, the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center says the rise can be attributed in part to conflict in Ethiopia and Mozambique, but also to natural disasters. The report warns that climate change is likely to drive displacement higher still. The center says numbers have been rising steadily over the past decade and warns that only sustained political will aimed at resolving conflict and addressing climate change can bring them down. Meanwhile, an international charity says children are suffering disproportionately from the Islamist insurgency in northern Mozambique. In a new report, Save the Children says many children do not know where their parents are, cannot go to school, have lost their identity papers. More than 300,000 children have been displaced by the conflict and about 2,500 separated from their parents. Islamist militants have been active in northern Mozambique for more than 3 years, beheading people, attacking towns and villages, and burning homes. And the United States has warned that there is extreme hunger in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region. Samantha Power, who's the head of USAID, says the U.S. Food Monitoring Emergency Agency has detected a Category 5 emergency, and in that there is no Category 6. Ms. Power also calls for an end to the fighting and access for food aid workers. According to the UN World Food Programme, 5.2 million people are in need of food assistance in Tigray alone. Just last week, a statement from U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called on the governments of Eritrea and Ethiopia to ensure aid is allowed to reach the millions of people who need it. The Ethiopian government insists it is committed to ensuring that its citizens are provided for, and it's working with international agencies. As we remember, fighting broke out in Tigray between the Ethiopian army and forces loyal to the region's former ruling party, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, in November last year. Staying in Ethiopia, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has announced that the country will begin a trial run for power generation at the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam during the upcoming rainy season as it prepares for the second filling of the reservoir. But Egypt and Sudan, which rely on Nile water resources, have stressed the need for a final agreement to enable the operation of Ethiopia's dam. Talks on the dam, which began in 2011 when it was first being constructed, have stalled several times, precipitating regional tensions. We're in Kenya now, where Lady Justice Martha Koome has become officially the Chief Justice of the country. The appointment of the 61-year-old career judge, a renowned human rights lawyer, was confirmed by President Uhuru Kenyatta. She assumes the role at a time when the relationship between the judiciary and the executive arm of government is at a low point. Last week, the High Court issued a scathing ruling that scuttled an initiative led by President Kenyatta to change the Constitution. The judges ruled the initiative was illegal and questioned Mr. Kenyatta's integrity. But his supporters, including government officials, alleged the judiciary has a vendetta against him and they're deliberately undermining the presidency. Let's get more now on this interesting story from Kenyan journalist Cyrus Ombati. Cyrus, thanks for joining us on the program. How are Kenyans reacting to the appointment of a lady justice, now we know her name, Martha Koome, as Chief Justice of Kenya?
Good evening. The appointment and the scheduled kind of swearing in of Chief Justice Martha Koome didn't come as a surprise. Many Kenyans had actually predicted that she is going to be named the new Chief Justice because of the people who had applied for the position and interviewed and how they performed during the interview sessions. This is because there has been a huge talk in the government, or rather among Kenyans, that the government was not happy with the previous former Chief Justice David Maraga. Hence, the current government wanted somebody whom they perceive as friendly to them in terms of delivering the rulings or judgments they want. So far, she's the first woman to be appointed or named the Chief Justice of Kenya under the new constitution, or since Kenya got independent, that's 1963. And many people are anxious to see how she performs. Chief Justice Martha Koome is known to be a reformist, or rather an activist. She's a female activist from the time she was in private practice, because she once served in the Federation of Kenya Women chapter, that's FIDA Kenya, which is an association of women fighting for justice for women at large. So there are mixed reactions, or rather expectations from Kenyans at large, but then it's a wait and see game to see how she delivers game.
So we do know the backstory now to Ms. Koome's nomination is that she was not the favorite to get nominated. People expected Fred Ngatia to be appointed instead. Tell us more about the selection process.
Well, based on the performance that out of the interviews they had, she didn't perform so well as compared to other competitors. There was one guy, a Kenyan lawyer, long-term lawyer called Fred Ngatia. Everyone expected him to be named the Chief Justice, but then he was not. Even himself, he was furious with the failure to be named the CJ, and he went ballistic, saying that he knew he had been failed by some of the people who are conducting the interviews because they gave him less marks intentionally. Based on the performance, or rather the judgments, or rather ranking among many Kenyans, Ngatia emerged the best during the interviews. But then we believe the commissioner of the Judicial Service Commission, which was doing the interviews, had their own parameters they used to rank Chief Justice Mother Koome, the incoming Chief Justice. Probably there was political influence. There was the political influence was the most pressing issue that we believe played a role in the naming of the new Chief Justice. Many lawyers have, there have been so many petitions here and there opposing her appointment as the Chief Justice, but then like any other society, we expected that kind of resistance, but we are just waiting to see how she performs. And that's a matter of time, and time will tell.
And her appointment, Cyrus, comes at a time, and we all realize it, when the government is trying to change the constitution. What are some of the challenges that she's likely to face in office? And then how can she tackle these challenges?
The new Chief Justice comes to the office when the government is, or the country is gearing towards constitutional reforms at large. Even though same courts which Chief Justice Koome is supposed to lead have stopped a plan by the government to expand the structure of the, or rather to change the structure of the government. Many Kenyans believe that her coming to the office is part of the game plan to enhance or to enable the entire process of restructuring the government continue. This is because as the Chief Justice, she is responsible for transferring of judges or making major decisions at the judiciary. She is influential, and she's joining the Judicial Service Commission, which is a decision-making body, or rather like a human resource agency of the judiciary. So her being a member of the JSC is going to be so influential, it's going to tilt a lot of issues here and there. In as much as she's seen as a reformist from her history, we as Kenyans believe that she was brought there with an agenda to enhance or to push for these reforms that the government wants. President Uhuru Kenyatta and the official opposition leader, Raila Odinga, are leading a campaign under the Building Bridges initiative, which is a drive aimed at restructuring the government structure. So we believe that Chief Justice Koome is going to be part of that drive to push for those changes, because many believe that the proposed changes are unconstitutional one way or the other, and the only body that can stop that process are the courts. But with the Koome now in charge of the courts there's a lot of doubt or skepticism at large, or a feeling that she's going to push the process to go on. And with time we'll know that. Thank you so much.
Cyrus, thanks again for bringing us up to speed on this story, and for helping us to gain more insight into it. Cyrus Mbati in Nairobi, Kenya. Now, here in Nigeria, the Ebonyi State governor, I beg your pardon, farmer herder crisis has spilled into Taraba State, has left no fewer than 60 people dead across 3 communities. A trouble started after a feud between herdsmen and Tiv people in Bali local government area. The crisis began in Torodonga community of Katsina Ala local government area of Benue State and escalated to Taraba.
It's a case of retaliation by herdsmen in Bali local government area in the Tiv tribe in Taraba State, triggered by an attack on the herdsmen in Katsina Ala local government area in Benue State. These series of attacks and counterattacks have so far affected 3 communities in Taraba State, claiming no fewer than 60 lives and thousands displaced. Some displaced persons have delivered babies at IDP camps with little or no food to eat.
We are the indigenous Tiv of Taraba State. We are not Tiv of Benue State. So for them to come and retaliate on us, the Tiv of Taraba, that is the unfortunate thing that I am questioning.
The leadership of the Fulani herdsmen says it's called its people to order, but seeks government's intervention to avert further breakdown of law and order.
Whoever is dead and cannot be brought back to life. We have lost our cattle as well. All we want government to do is to reduce the losses we incurred and help us stand to our feet again. We are suffering and need assistance.
The state government, in its efforts to restore peace, visited some camps in Jatau and Bali communities and gave assurances that measures are being put in place to avoid an escalation of the conflict.
All the crises that are taking place is an escalation of crisis somewhere else. Now I have taken a very strong and a serious measure. After all this, I will call all the leaders of the tribes and all our traditional leaders here in Bali local government. I will bring out a very strong control strategies so as to see that this thing will not happen again.
The police also calls for calm.
We are working on our intelligence as to know who are those people who are behind the crisis, the sponsors, of course, the instigators, and the shadow parties that are probably trying to benefit from the crisis so that we can ensure that they are brought to book.
Clashes between farmers and herders in Taraba and Benue states usually occur at the onset of the rainy season. The people remain hopeful that both sides will rework their strategy to bring a lasting solution.
Still to come on the program. Tunisian farmer turns to technology to mitigate risks associated with water shortages, a growing problem in the country. Stay with us. Welcome back to Network Africa. The Ebonyi State Governor here in Nigeria, Dave Umahi, has raised alarm that foreign herders have infiltrated the country and are causing mayhem. He made the comment at a media briefing organized by the presidential media team at State House Abuja. According to the governor, the southern region does not have grazing routes for cattle to move freely without trespassing. He says open grazing gives armed foreign herders freedom to attack innocent people and call for funding for cattle ranches through the Federation account.
In the southeast, you don't have cattle routes. But in the north, we have cattle routes. And so nobody is going to say ban, open grazing, in some areas in the north where there are cattle routes, where they move constitutionally from one point to the other. But in the south, there is no cattle route. And so for you to move from one point to the other, you have to move through farms. You have to move through, population, dense areas. And this is not very good. And that's what the southern governors and, of course, Southeast in particular are saying. Let's go back to our traditional method of relationship. We will no longer allow you to take your cattle from one local government to the other. And the implication is that these foreign headers also come in terms of, mobile headers with AK-47. So that is a source of conflict. So anybody that is saying that there should be no ban on this thing is, on the other hand, saying that, look, these killings will continue. And that's what gave birth to ESN. Whether we support it as governors, we don't. But the people tend to support it because of the foreign headers that pretend that they are raiding cattle and then they are killing. In my own village, a white man was kidnapped in my village that's doing construction, by these foreign headers. And we've encouraged the federal government, let's treat this, cattle raiding as a business. Take money from the federation account and develop ranches where they are designated ranches, especially in the north. And the northern governors are willing, but it's being frustrated.
The Democratic Republic of Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi has differed with his Rwandan counterpart Paul Kagame over a report that accused Rwandan forces of committing mass atrocities in the DR Congo. Mr. Tshisekedi says there should be justice for the victims of atrocities cited by the 2010 UN mapping report. And that report, which President Kagame challenges, documented the most serious violations against international humanitarian law committed between 1993 and 2003. The report prompted denials from Rwanda and other countries that were named. But Mr. Tshisekedi says justice must be given to all victims who lost their lives in the DR Congo and in the region. We're in Tunisia now, where agriculture is making its digital revolution. And that's why Mahmoud Bouassida, who's a farmer, has turned to technology to mitigate risks associated with water shortages, which is a growing problem in the country.
In Takelsa and northeastern Tunisia, 46-year-old Mahmoud Bosida checks his oranges while looking worried because of water shortages in past years affecting his 12-hectare farm.
In recent years, we notice a great shortage of dam water. And as we know that agriculture is the largest consumer of water in Tunisia and in the whole world, today the farmer finds himself faced with water scarcity, which leads to disturbances in relation to the tree and the spread of disease.
To mitigate the great risk of drought, Bosida has turned to technology. He installed sensors in irrigation pipes and in the soil connected to the software of Azira Solutions, an agri-tech startup to help manage his farm. The system regulates the salinity of the soil and injects necessary mineral salts. The system also connects the farm to a station that automates the irrigation and fertilization processes using information sent by the software. Azira Solutions co-founder Isa Bold says that the irrigation growing system software is developing an intelligent system.
Intelligent growing system, c'est un système de pilotage.
Intelligent growing system is a piloting and irrigation control system. It allows the farmer to get a report of what's happening in his soil and to have a real-time data from the ground and weather station in order to make a decision on when and how much to irrigate and when is the most important time to irrigate, helping in optimizing water resources in terms of irrigation.
Forecast in Tunisia points to longer droughts, a reduction in water resources and an increased number of fires over the next decade. The agriculture industry represents between 9 and 11% of GDP and nearly 15% of employment in the North African country.
Well, notable heroes or heroines, they say, wear capes, and the same is true for this 12-year-old girl, a schoolgirl from Kenya's western Busia country who rode her pregnant mother through flooded waters up to the hospital. Her mother, Judith Anyango Akala, says her waters broke around 3 in the morning of Tuesday and then asked her daughter to get her to a nearby hospital as her husband had left earlier in the night for work. Now, as their village, Rukala, is submerged by high water in Lake Victoria. Following heavy rains, the family is living in a camp together with other families who are being forced from their homes. The young girl steered the boat through the dark using the torch from her mother's mobile phone to help guide her. Ms. Akala said they rode through vegetation and kept getting lost before arriving at the Rukala Model Health Center. And that journey took about 1 hour. She should have her name put on a plaque. Thanks for watching Network Africa. I'm Amarachi Ubani.